Welcome back to Fortunate Fishes. I'm your host, Charlie Garcia. My guest today is a dentist who walked away from a 32-year career practice after one Advil pill almost killed him. He spent 3 decades doing cosmetic and sedation dentistry in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He earned his biology degree at the University of Colorado in Boulder, and then his DDS from USC. And while he was running his dental practice, he became obsessed with one question that kept him up at night. Why do people do what they do? He cracked it open. He figured out there are exactly 9 universal motivations that drive every human being on the planet. He calls them the 9 whys. He built a tool that will tell you yours in literally 5 to 7 minutes. He built a deeper version called the WHY operating system. Your why, your how, your what, in that order. 3 words that explain almost every decision that you've ever made. He's on a mission to help 1 billion people discover theirs. I tried it on myself. I tried it on my wife. I tried it on my entire R360 community. He spent 3 days with us and our spouses and walked us through it one by one. And here's what really convinced me it was real. He told us about a college basketball coach named Brian Green who adopted WHY.os at the start of his career. Green walked into the worst programs in the country and rebuilt every single one using this tool. New Mexico State, 2015, he inherits an 11-win team. And by 2018, there were 40-win conference champions, the biggest single turnaround in all of college baseball. Washington State, 2020, another program that had won 11 games, 4 straight winning seasons, first time in a decade. And then finally, he goes to Wichita State. He inherits a 20-36 team. His current squad has the best ERA in the conference. His catcher leads the entire nation in slugging, and they scored recently like 30 runs in a single game. So what is it that he's doing? Dr. Gary Sanchez, who I call my friend now, I guess we should call him Dr. Y. Welcome to the show.
That's a great introduction. I've never had that one. I love that.
Everybody wants to know, like, how the hell does an Advil almost literally kill you?
You know what, Charlie, this came at a time when I was both a dentist as well as trying to bring the Why Institute together. I had developed a process for helping people figure out their why, but it wasn't a tool yet. It was just a conversation that I was able to take people through to find their why. And at that time, I was very obsessed with it. But I went to this event in Santa Fe called Zozobra. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's kind of like a Burning Man type thing, but it's more of a show where they burn this giant puppet, and it's supposed to be like putting all your worries into that, burn them, let them go, and then now it's time for a renewal. But it was basically for a buddy's 45th birthday party, right? So, of course, we ate and drank a little bit too much, and I woke up the next day with a headache. And so wake up, I didn't have any Advil, went down to the front desk, got a couple of Advil, took them, went back to bed, no big deal, right? One of the Advil didn't dissolve, and it lodged in my GI tract, and it burnt a hole right where there was an artery. And I started to bleed internally, and I didn't know it.
What does burnt a hole mean? Like, how does that happen?
It was from the coating on the Advil, the outer, this was a caplet, not it was one of the hard kind of brownish colored ones. And for whatever reason, that coating burnt a hole, because when they went in there with a scope, they could see it. So it burnt a hole right where there was an artery, and I started bleeding. And I don't know it because you can't feel it, right? I just felt bad. So I drove back from Santa Fe to Albuquerque. I actually went to the gym and worked out, tried to work it off, got home, started throwing up. I mean, just blood's coming out, a lot of blood coming out everywhere. So obviously, in that moment, something's not right. So I go to the ER, and it was a busy weekend. It was a holiday weekend. So it was very busy, and I had to wait 11 hours. And so by the time they finally admitted me, my blood pressure was 60/30. And I'd lost half of my blood. And mistakenly, they'd also, on top of all of that, given me aspirin. And I wasn't obviously supposed to be taking aspirin when you have an internal bleed. So I'm bleeding even more. I get up to go to the restroom, and I'm not in a private room because, again, it was such a busy weekend. And as soon
Right.
as I lock the door behind me, I pass out and hit my face on the sink, and now I'm knocked out on the ground.
Jeez.
And luckily, I woke up. If I hadn't woke up, I would have just bled to death. I wake up, there's blood everywhere. I push the door open, and then I pass out again. Next thing I know, I wake up in this bed. They've cut all my clothes off. I have the two pads on me. They had to revive me. Then off to surgery to try to stop that bleed. They, went in with a scope, but they couldn't get to it because of where it was located around this one corner. They couldn't get there. So they decided to just wait and see what happened. So they did a CAT scan so they could see if I was still bleeding. And when they were pumping all the dye into my arm, they blow out the blood vessel in my arm and it starts filling up with blood clots. So they do an ultrasound. The doctor comes in and says, Gary, the blood clots are growing in towards your lungs. If they get into your lungs, you're going to die. But if we try to stop the blood clots, you have a bleed that we can't get to. So you're going to die. And I said, well, what are we going to do? He said, I don't know. I don't know what to do. And luckily, my phone rang right then. And it was a buddy of mine who was a cardiologist at the hospital.
Right.
And he said, hey, Gary, I didn't even know you were in here, but I don't like what they're going to do. And I'm going to take over and I'm going to monitor this. So I was in the ICU for 9 days. Have you ever been a patient in the ICU?
I haven't, but my mother, who I came to Daytona to take care of, was in the ICU probably 6 times in a 2-year period. So I know what it's like.
Yeah. And I can tell you it's a lot different being there than being in the bed there. And it's a different experience. It was fascinating because even though I know, I have a medical background, it was so hard to figure anything out what to do when you're the one in the bed.
Were you in pain at the time?
No, I wasn't in pain, but the pain was actually from no sleep for 9 days because they come and wake you up all the time. And they took blood 45 times from my arm. And that was the only pain. I had everything that could go wrong in the ICU as well with blood infections and on and on and on. But ultimately what happened is I had to go to bed one evening with an IV of heparin to stop the blood clots and hope that I didn't bleed. And that's what happened. And then they could treat me with blood thinners. And then eventually I was able to get out. And I had some brain stuff that happened with all this, but went through a bunch of testing. Anyways, when I got out, I finally get back to my dental practice. And one of my patients that's in his mid 80s takes me aside and said, hey, Gary, you got a second chance on life here. And he said, when you get to be my age and you look back on your time here on earth, are you going to be glad you stayed a dentist? Or are you going to wish you'd taken this Y thing to the world? I said, I'm going to wish that I'd taken this Y thing to the world. He said, well, then you know what you need to do. And that's when I walked away from my practice.
Wow.
So I needed that, strangely enough, to be able to make a decision to move out, to move on, to go to the next chapter. I was just straddling it with one foot in each. And that doesn't do good for anybody.
What did you feel like when the doctor came in and said, Gary, you're going to die? What goes through your mind at that point,
The first thing that went through my mind is, I cannot believe this is how I'm going to go out. Not jumping off a cliff, not out of a helicopter, not doing something crazy or fun or exciting or just risky. From an Advil. Really, that's going to be my exit out of this world, an Advil? And I wasn't in pain. So initially, I just didn't even believe it. I was like, how could this be? I don't hurt. I didn't think that was going to be a possibility. And here's something else. I felt like it was the end of me being in control of me. So what I mean by that is, during that time in my life, there were some challenges that I was going through, and I kept feeling like, God was tapping me on the shoulder. Hey, you need some help? I'm like, no, I got this. I got it. I'm in control. And then I tore my rotator cuff. All my activities are around racket sports. And so I
Wow.
my rotator cuff and I couldn't use my right arm for a while. And I was like, another tap. Hey, think you need some help? It was more like, do you remember that old commercial? Can you hear me now? That,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
So it's kind of like can you hear me now? And I was like, no, I got this. Okay, well, let me put you into the hospital here. Can you hear me now? No, I got this. I got it. I'm all and then when finally it got to be where there was no answer, say, "Can you hear me now?" I'm like, "Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear. I don't got this. I don't got this."
You had like a religious, spiritual moment. Sounds to me like you had an appointment, and I have, I'll tell you what happened to me also there. And you like woke up and said, okay, you're here for a reason, get to it. And it's not to do that, it's to do this.
You are on the wrong path.
And you listened. I remember one of our members has an island, and she took 25 veterans, Navy SEALs, all, and they had all at one point in their life, because of what they had seen, tried to commit suicide. Now they're on the road to recovery. And I remember I have this stone behind me. It says, sometimes is surrender, just like, hey, we're not in control.
Yeah.
And, faith is my number one value. And we're a vessel, we have gifts, work in a partnership to change the world. How did you come up with the billion number? Because my number's 3 billion, but it's not, it's through all of our 360 at scale.
2 ways. One is it scares the heck out of me because I don't know how to get there. I just know what I wanna do, and at that time, I could only help people that spoke English. That was the English-speaking population, in the world, so that's how I picked it, and I just knew if I can help 1,000,000,000 people understand who they are and find their passion, what an amazing gift that would be, but what we could actually accomplish.
No, that's amazing.
Yeah, and so that's really where that came from. And what's interesting about it, though, Charlie, is when you set a goal that's so high, you have no idea how to get there, people start coming forward and saying, "I can help you."
I read a book. There's one of my favorite books, and somebody reminded me of it, and I just bought it. I haven't read it again, but I'm going to. It's called Replay, and it was written in the 80s by Ken Grimwald. And it's about this guy who's a media exec. He's 43. His life isn't great. He's married. He has kids, has a heart attack, and dies on his desk at his office. And he wakes up, he's like 20 years old, and he's back in college. And he looks up and he sees his college roommate doing homework, but he remembers everything. How did he live his life? But first thing he did is he went to Vegas because he knew who was going to win the Super Bowl and the World Series and all that. But then he kept getting to that 43 and coming back, and then living these different lives. But we have non-refundable minutes. It's all we got. I became friends with an ophthalmologist. Everybody told him not to go to college, to go to a trade school, but he really wanted to help people. And he didn't do well in school, but he ended up getting into med school in Europe. And somebody gave him a book called It Works. It Works was written like in 1923, doesn't have an author, but it basically said your mind is like a radio station that transmits and receives, but you need to be clear. So if you knew you couldn't fail, if you knew you couldn't fail, what would you really, really want to do with your life? So he wrote down like 30 things. And then it said, well, we got to be focused. So pick the 10 most important. Pick those. And I said, okay, if you had to eliminate one, which one would you eliminate until you only had one? But then he wrote them in order. And this was like late 50s, early 60s that he did this. And then it said, put it in your pocket and read it 3 times a day. And he did it. And he had like, he wanted to be famous, he wanted to make his parents proud. Number 2 was he wanted to own helicopters. He wanted to invent something that would make a huge difference in people's lives. So he becomes an inventor, and he invents the machine to take cataracts out of people's eyes so they can see. His name was Dr. Charlie Kellman, very famous guy. He also was a musician. He played an instrument on Johnny Carson, and it was something so like you said, the universe conspires to bring people into your life if you're really focused and you're really doing something to benefit humanity like you're doing. From your point of view, what would happen if a million people knew their what, they knew their how, and they really knew how to apply it?
Yeah. So what happens when you know your why, how, and what is it gives you clarity. Here's what I really did develop, Charlie, which is most people have a sense of who they are, but they can't say it. And if you can't say it, you don't really know it. It's not useful. So I developed the language, the words to be able to clearly articulate who am I to yourself and to others. And so the first step in peak performance is self awareness. And the first step in self awareness is knowing your why. And that's what I was able to develop so that it's now doable for everybody. Simon Sinek talked about start with why. And I totally agree with him. Start with your why. But the point is, don't stop there. Don't stop with your why. That's just the very first step. But most people could never figure that first step out. So they couldn't use the concept. It was something that was very powerful, but not useful at that point. Now you can have in 7 minutes, you'll know your why, your how, and your what, and you'll be able to say it so that you can use it. That gives you the confidence, the clarity, the certainty to be able to make decisions that fit you, build a life that fits you. So if I could boil it all down to 4 words, it would be this: who first, then what? Figure out who are you first. Then you can figure out what is it you really want to do that's in alignment with who you are, so you love what you do. So you don't build something, a life you're not going to like. Think of how many people we both know that have built a life that looks amazing, but they don't like it.
We're going to get into how listeners can do this assessment or connect with you. But I got this discovery when I was 50 years old. I'd read Bill George's books, True North, Authentic Leadership. And he was doing one of these 5-day, go to Harvard, pay 15,000. And I went, and what I discovered in small groups, I didn't know my why. What is my life purpose? Why am I here? And I hired a coach from WHY.os, which I was in, still am, and I paid 5,000 a month for 12 months. It took me a year, $60,000, and it changed my life. Once I knew I was doing 23 things, and I said, those don't fit my purpose. And I narrowed it down to 3. And all of those things are like an onion with 50 levels. And you're never going to get to mastery if you're doing 50 things, because you just don't have the time. And what I also like about what you do is when you get the assessment, it literally tells you, if this is your why, here are some career choices. For me, doctor, lawyer, financial planner, teacher, support team, psychologist, coach, CEO. Okay, I've been a CEO of 7 companies. I've been a coach of every team I've led. I've been a teacher at the university level. I had a financial service company. I'm a lawyer. Okay. I did not become a doctor because it wasn't my thing, but every single one. I mean, it's crazy. It's so accurate. And for someone that's trying to figure out why are they here and how they can use their God-given gifts to benefit their family, their community, the world. I mean, you could go pay 60,000 with a good coach and figure it out, or you could do this. And what's fascinating to me, because I hired a PhD and it took me 2 years to do the archetype assessment that you take for free on our website. 2 years. It's complicated. It's not easy, but you're a little bit of a Da Vinci inventor. How did you figure this out? Like, how did you do this?
Yeah. And, let me add a little bit more to what you said, and then we'll jump into that. Here's what most people do, me included. At about the age of 17 or 18, your parents' friends, when they would come over to your house, they would ask you that question that you hated the most. right? So, Charlie, what do you want to do when you grow up? Right? What do you want to be? What do you want to be? So I've had 17 years of life so far, but mostly
Right.
based on sports and getting in trouble and doing stupid things. And now I'm supposed to make a decision that's going to determine the next 40 years of my life based on the experience I have, right? So how the heck am I going to do that? I didn't know. So I went off to college with a degree of undeclared, and then you're forced to make your, pick a major. How the heck do you do that? When you don't know what you want to do? And then once you pick a major, then you got to figure out what are you going to do with the major. And all these are things that you don't really have a way to understand how to make those choices. So you have to make something. So who we typically work with are people that made a choice when they didn't know who they were, got good at that choice, and then feel trapped by the life they built around the decision they made. And that is so many people. And then once you figure that out, you got to switch. What are you going to switch to? And once you do that, your runway is a lot shorter. So one of the things we talk about is the younger you are, when you figure out who you are, the longer the runway is to be who you were meant to be. So if you can help your kids.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Absolutely.
you found out at 50. What if you'd have waited till 60?
Yeah,
Right?
no. And my why is to inspire and connect others to achieve their full potential. That's it.
Love it.
That's who I'm about. But, my youngest, since she was 8 years old, knew what she wanted to do. She wanted to communicate through art and music and acting. But none of my other kids really knew. I have another daughter. We were at a spiritual retreat in India, and it all came together, late 20s, which is awesome because now she has, so much more time than I did, 22 years to be in the zone. But I want you to tell me something because you can use this in so many different ways. Tell us about baseball coach Brian Green. I mean, I find it just fascinating that he can take this tool and apply it to a freaking baseball team.
So what happens is now when I'm in different sporting events, like golf tournaments, I was in a golf tournament, a member guest tournament, and he was in it. And so a mutual friend said, "Hey, you got to help Coach Brian Green discover his WHY.os." And so that happens a lot now. And so I did. I took him through it. And when we were done, I said, "How does that feel to you?" And he goes, "Man, that is me to a T." The two most common words I hear are spot on. He said, "That's spot on, man. That's me to a T. That's what I preach. That's what I talk about. I really need you to help me with my team." So I went down to Las Cruces, New Mexico. We took his coaches, assistant coaches, and all the players through discovering their why, how, and what. And then we created a big matrix. When we went to lunch, I said, "Brian, I want you to circle all your favorite players." So he started circling them all, and they all ended up having a similar why to him, similar why and how to him. And
Right.
so I said, "Brian, if you could use this to recruit and build your team, would that be valuable for you?" And he goes, "Oh my gosh, I would love to do that." So that's what he did do. And then he had the biggest turnaround in the history of the NCAA, had 34 plus win season, 34 plus win seasons in a row, 9 All-Americans, 12 players taken in the Major League Draft, where they'd never had one in the history of the program. And like you said, then on to Washington State, did the same thing there. And then now he's at Wichita State. But I ran into him recently and I said, "Brian, how are things going for you?" And, I reached the pinnacle, he said, of college baseball. I said, "What do you attribute that to?" He said, "I build everything based on their why, their how, and their what." And he said, "But what I told you actually wasn't true back then. I don't just want people with my why or how.
Right.
I need to have everybody. But now I know who I have. I can put them in places where I know they're going to have the biggest impact. Then we have the biggest impact. And that's been the secret to my success." You can do that with your baseball team. You can do that with any team. You can do it with your family.
And I love this because when I taught for 2 years at MIT, they developed an assessment, the predictive index for the military, because during World War II, they were losing a lot of pilots and planes. And it's because, you and I graduate number one, number two from pilot school, it's like, what do you want to be? Oh, I want to be a bomber. Oh, I want to be a fighter pilot. Well, it turns out that a bomber pilot has the exact same behavioral DNA as a brain surgeon. They're very focused. They can concentrate for long periods of times. They go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. Well, the other guy, the fighter pilot, he doesn't follow rules, super creative, has ADHD, doesn't have an attention span. And if you put the wrong guy in the wrong plane, you're screwed. So once they figured that out, um, they reduced the losses by 90%. This was commercialized in the 1950s, and about a third of the Fortune 500 use it. Every single R360 member goes through it. And like you said, the number one skill of a leader is self-awareness. You have to understand, like, hey, I'm built like this. I'm perfect the way I am, but my perfection will probably drive some people nuts. And there's certain things that I drive my wife nuts with, but at least I know the second best quality of a leader is empathy. You have to say, hey, I got these 7 high achievers that report to me, and they're built very differently. I have 4 children. Their predictive index is all over the map. And if I treated them the same, I'm not going to get them to achieve their full potential. What I love about this is it took me a year to get to my why. And I've worked with R260 members through a series of books and 13 exercises. And I'm still just fascinated that with the 5 to 10 minute assessment, you can pin it down. You do 80% of the work that took me a year.
You know, you were asking, how did I do it? If I was listening to this, I'd say, well, what the heck does a dentist know about any of this stuff?
Right.
Right? I don't know anything about this stuff, and I didn't set out to do this. I did not wake up one day and say, hey, I think I'm going to create a software to help someone figure out their why. No, that's not at all how it happened. I was trying to figure it out for myself, for my dental practice. And this was back in 2009. And that's when I heard Simon Sinek's TED Talk and I read that book. And I went, I watched that TED Talk 20, 30 times and I could not figure it out. Then I called him, right? And we spent about 8 months trying to figure mine out. And I couldn't get anywhere with it. And finally, I just kept working by myself and I figured it out. And my why is to find a better way and share it, right? Everything in my life is about finding better ways to do things and then sharing them with the world. That's what I'm doing right now. And I have a lot of patents and products and inventions that are better ways of doing things.
You had them already. Like this was part of you already. So.
Already. Yeah. And so as I figured it out, and then I changed all the messaging from my practice, from talking about what we do to why we do it. And that's when my practice really took off. And as my practice took off, I started getting calls from other dentists that I studied with. They said, hey, can you help me do that? And so I went back and figured out what Simon was trying to do, and I made it better just to help my buddies. I did it for the next 7 years for free for anybody that would let me. Every patient, every dentist that I knew. If you were sitting next to me on an airplane, Charlie, you were going to get your why discovered. And so I just did it for free, and I started to notice patterns and trends and similarities. And I figured out there's only 9 different whys. That was the most important thing I figured out. With Simon, he was saying there's an unlimited number of whys. Well, if that's the case, you'll never know if you're there. It's like, is that my why? Or maybe that other one was my why. Or I'm not sure what my why was, but I think it's this. Well, sort of kind of thinking that you might know your why is not very valuable.
Your why is your life purpose. It really is. What is your life purpose? And it works for a company as well. So in R360, we're very purposeful. We started with our purpose. Our purpose is to architect an oasis for strategic wealth creators and their families to flourish around the 6 forms of capital: fishes, financial, intellectual, social, human, emotional, and spiritual. And you start with your purpose, and then what are your values? And if you know those and you can articulate them, like you said, it's a magnet. You changed all your messaging. Did you start asking the why? Was the trigger the first time you were like in a room and heard Simon Sinek? Was that, or was it before then?
No, it was just how I heard about Simon was through a coach that I had, a guy named
Mm.
John Assaraf. You might know John Assaraf. He was in the movie The Secret. And through him, um, I learned about this whole concept of why. He had a podcast way back in the day. It wasn't called a podcast, but he had a weekly show, and one week he had Simon on it. And I heard about the concept of why, and I was like, man, that is what I'm missing. I have a great what, but I have no idea what my why is. And that's what I became obsessed with. It's a better way to understand yourself. And once I figured it out, I couldn't help but share it.
What does Simon get right, and what does he miss based on, your work with him?
Yeah. So he definitely got right that is to start with why. If you just start with the why, he was able to create a picture of what it all is that we were all thinking and feeling with the why, the how, and the what. And as soon as we all saw that model, we all understood it and said, man, that is spot on. Now I want it for myself. And what he didn't have was how to actually do it. And so that's when I tried to go through it with him. And also knowing your why is, again, a really great first step, but adding
Right.
your how and your what helps even more.
There are 9
Yeah.
whys. It's contribute, trust, make sense, better way, challenge, mastery, clarify, simplify. I am contribute,
Yep.
mastery, clarify. And I've done this now with my wife, my 4 children, and their spouses or significant others. And when you look at it, you're like, oh my gosh, like we like you see all, and I'm still waiting for Gary we're going to meet with the family, do a Zoom call, because I want to have that baseball team that everybody has the self-awareness. We're built perfectly the way that we are, but really understanding. And my job as the chief energy officer, the CEO of the family, my purpose is to inspire and connect others to achieve their full potential. I have 3 God-given gifts. Inspire. I'm always the coach, the teacher. I've taught at the university level at MIT. I get booked and paid $30,000 a talk. I used to do that all the time to go inspire people. I write and I inspire people through my writing. Then I connect. So I used to be one of the top 20 most connected people in the world on LinkedIn. Now that they have 3 billion, I'm in the top 100. I'm a natural connector. I was sitting down with Gary for dinner. It's like, oh, I got to connect you to this person, connect you with that, connect you with that. And I get in trouble because then 2 weeks later, Gary's like, hey, you haven't connected me with those guys yet. So I'm going to do that. The last thing is I am the strategy guy. When I was on the State Board of Education, I led the strategy. When I was on the Fortune 500 board of Winn-Dixie, I led the strategy. When I worked for Bill Bennett, when he was a drug czar, I led the nation's first drug control strategy ever. I'm that guy that can see the big, hairy, audacious goal, create the process, bring the people in. I'm not the operator. That's not me. I don't like the day-to-day operations. I'm the guy that sees it, the big, hairy, audacious goal, and puts everything together. But what I learned through Gary is that in order to do that, I have to go deep, man. I have, I can read really fast. So I'll read 100 books, 100 papers. I'll get all the way into it. And Gary calls this mastery. When I have mastery, I can then clarify it at a very high level because I can take these complex subjects, go down a rabbit hole, and then explain it simply to people and then answer questions. And I'm helping make money for people, like a lot of money, pensioners all over the world. I get a lot of value of just helping people figure stuff out. And that's the way it shows up.
What you just did is way better than I was going to say it. Because if all we knew, Charlie, was your why,
Yeah.
we would see you in one dimension, the one dimension from the perspective of your why. You just added your how, which in our world is mastery, which we, diving in really deep, looking for the nuances, the little things that make the big difference. And I don't know if your audience knew that about you, because I didn't know that about you until we were having dinner in Florida, and you were
Yeah.
sitting next to the gentleman that's also a speed reader, and you were telling me, yeah, I read 3 books and 20 publications a week. I'm like, what?
He was reading at 4,000 words a minute. He held the speed reading championship for 20 years in the US until a British woman beat him in 2006 reading 4,300 words. I was at like 3,800 and I thought I was fast, but yeah, crazy.
Yeah, but does your audience know that? I didn't know you read 3 books and 20 publications a week.
And also have the retention. You have to score a 90% when you speed read on these tests. It's something called an eidetic memory. It's not photographic. I remember numbers and pictures and names. Like you and I could be at a meeting and I could say, wait a minute, Gary, can I push? Yeah, and I'll remember something that you and I talked about today that is filed away, some pattern that's relevant that I can bring out of the archive. But my real gift is writing. And I'll share this one story while I'm thinking about it. On January 22nd, after an R360 meeting, I'm going back to Daytona Beach and I get a call that my 18-year-old nephew came back from high school and found my brother dead in the living room. I'm like, what? I was just talking to him like yesterday. Like, he works out 4 days a week. He doesn't drink. He's healthy. He's 59. So we do an autopsy. And what we find out is that he was on his phone because his phone was next to him. His reading glasses were in his bedroom. He was preparing for a trial. He slipped in the living room, fell over backwards, and before hitting the ground, his head hit a coffee table and snapped his neck.
Mm.
So the autopsy came back that he snapped his neck. And freak accident, has a 21-year-old and an 18-year-old, that he leaves behind. And my own father died in my brother's arms. So it's like a weird thing. But 11 days later, I'm at the National Prayer Breakfast, and a friend of mine who is giving the closing address says, "Hey, Charlie, I'm going to do you a solid tonight. Like, I am putting you at the main table with the guy that got the Nobel Prize for feeding 120 million people during the pandemic." Thank you, thank you. But I need a favor. I'm like, for you, anything. You're an R360 member. What do you need? Well, before he speaks, I want you to get on stage and for 5 minutes, let the spirit move you. Can you just talk about your relationship to Jesus? Like, and then somebody pulled away. And this was like in 2 hours. I called my wife and she's like, "You're not going to do it, right? I mean, that's nuts. I mean, there's presidents and members of Congress in the audience from all over the world." So I did it. The whole next couple of days were kind of, we'll have to go into it in detail of all these things that happened to me with 28 is my number. It's my R360 number. It has a particular meaning. It's a perfect number, just like the number 6 is the first perfect number. I think Jesus's message is 6 words: love God, love yourself, love others. The rest is commentary. Of course, doing those things is very difficult. But what came to me, just like you have an appointment to help a billion people find their why, and the message I got, like, you thought that somebody was tapping on your back. Well, the message I got was, hey, your brother, perfect health, perfect everything, slip, second later. So you have a gift, you have a why,
Mm-hmm.
and you're either going to get to it or you're not. And if you're not, well, we have a solution for that. You have a gift, use it. And I think it takes a lot of courage to do what you did. I mean, you're a famous, well-known, successful dentist, 32-year dental practice, been working 3 days a week with a 4-day weekend every week. Most people would have doubled down on that. Yes, you had a scare, but blowing up your whole life, I mean, how did you do that?
I don't think I could have done it without the clarity of knowing what I was supposed to be doing. You know, I felt it inside me that I was on the right path. And I felt like I was meant for more because as a dentist, right, I'm sitting in my office every day. When I go to work, I'm in there. If I don't show up, then nothing happens. And it was, didn't fit me, but I still had put so much time and effort into it. So, like you said, Charlie, I didn't just practice dentistry like a typical dental dentist might. Most dentists take 20 hours of
Right.
CE a year. I took 250 hours every year for 20 years. We had
Wow.
half day staff meetings every week to be able to deliver on what we said we were going to do. We did dentistry at a very exquisite level. We took pictures of every step of everything we did to prove what we did. Lots and lots of before and after. So it wasn't just a average dental practice that I wasn't invested in. I was super invested into it, but it wasn't the right thing.
And what about your family and friends? Because that's the big obstacles most people have. I went to law school, and now I'm telling my parents, "I don't wanna be a lawyer, it's not for me." It's like, "What do you mean? You just spent, like, yeah, you owe a fortune to, Columbia Law School." Like, what did your family? Did they think you were nuts, your family and friends?
You know, and what's interesting is at that time, all I had was a ability to have a conversation with you to help you find your why. But I was so passionate and I was so excited about it, and I wasn't making and I was doing it all for free, and I still walked away. So what's interesting about what you're asking, Charlie, is does discovering your why, how and what, or we could just say why, will that make your life easier?
Could blow it up.
It could make it easier, but it also could make it more challenging. So I leave a dental practice where I'm an expert at what I do. I'm only working 3 days a week. I'm making a ton of money. I have 40 weekends. I could do what I want. And I walk away to something I have no idea how to speak on stage. I have no idea about software. I have no idea about internet marketing. I have no idea about podcast, none of any of this. But it's what I was supposed to do. Was supposed to have sold it right before COVID. We didn't know COVID was coming, right?
Right,
So I
right.
had sold it. I had already sent a video out to all my patients, you know, heartfelt video and, you know, I'm leaving and all the rest. And I thought I was out the door and COVID hits. And the guy that was buying it from me couldn't get his loan anymore. So I had to stay on another year and say
Wow.
goodbye to every single I hate saying goodbye to people. It's like my worst thing nightmare. I cry every single time. I then had to say goodbye to every single patient every single day for the next year
Wow.
until he could come back. And finally, when I could turn it over to him, and they love him. He's just a wonderful, wonderful person to replace me. Then I was able to fully focus on what I'm really meant to do. And I haven't looked back once. I haven't regretted it. It's what I needed to do all along. It's the path I should have been on. But here's a question I have. I'd love your opinion on this, Charlie, because there are times when I say I should have never been a dentist. But if I hadn't been a dentist, would the rest of this ever have existed?
Yeah, that's the whole replay book, that I think about all the time. But all of these things happen, and then you realize you don't really know who you are. You also have childhood trauma that my parents never really said, "I love you." There weren't those type of people, and I thought that to get their love, I had to perform. I had to achieve. So I was so busy achieving things that when I met with my 4 kids, we had this R360 exercise early on. It's like, what have I done well as a parent, a father, and what are opportunities to do better? And they were like, man, we really admire everything you're doing on the board of the Girl Scouts and Junior Achievement and the State Board of Education. You're like changing the world. But when was the last time we went anywhere together? Just the two of us. For that matter, all my friends that are going on family vacations. When's the last time we've gone on a family vacation? And part of it that I had this fear that my dad died at 62. I'm going to die at 62. So I got to get everything done before I die. And in the meantime, I'm neglecting the people that I really love. So now I have a whole different kind of parenting approach with my kids. I want them to really do what's in their heart. I want them to feel, not to think. I tell them I'm proud of them all the time. I love them unconditionally. I want them to achieve their full potential, whatever that is. And if they want anything from me, they know all they got to do is say, Dad, this is what I want to do. Here's all the positives. Here's all the negatives. This is what I want to do. And let me ask questions. I'll ask questions, and whatever they decide, go for it. Because I've done the same thing in my life so many times, and it's the wrong decision, but that led me to something else. And I tell them, if you want my opinion, I'll give it to you, but by no means feel obligated to follow my opinion. And you don't have to ask. I find that way they always ask because they know I'm not going to be judgmental, and the wrong decision can lead to the right decision. So, but I do agree with you. If you can figure this stuff early, you supercharge your career, because I'm basically spinning shiny objects that wasted a lot of time. But I want to go back to you because you've kind of done this to me: a why, a how, and a what. Yours is better way, clarify, simplify. Bring that to life.
Yeah. So my why is to find a better way and share it. So I believe success happens when we find better ways and are able to share them. How I do that is by making things clear and understandable, first for myself and then for others. And then ultimately, what I bring are simple solutions that are doable, usable. And so the WHY.os discovery, which is the tool we're talking about, is a better, clear, and simple way for you to know you by helping you find your why, how, and what. And it does it in under 10 minutes, and really about 7 to 8 minutes. So the WHY.os is my why, my how, and my what, but it's also my decision-making process. If you had an idea that you wanted to propose to me, it better be better than what we're currently doing. You better bring it in a clear way, and it better be simple enough to be usable, or I'm not going to want it. If it's not better, clear, and simple, I don't want it. And so it allows my team to understand who I am, how I think, so they can start to make decisions without me in the room, because they know the decision I'm going to make has to go through the filter of, is it better? Is it clear? Is it simple? So your WHY.os, yeah, tells you so much more than just your why does. It's also the basis of your messaging, your marketing, your branding. If you are the visionary for your company's why, how, and what is your why, how, and what. And that's why somebody would choose you. So developing your messaging, writing your LinkedIn about page, developing the messaging for your website, all of that comes from your why, your how, and your what. And it becomes so much easier when you know it. Without it, you rely on hope. Man, I sure hope this feels right. I sure
Right.
hope this direction feels right. I sure hope I can find my passion. I sure hope I can find all the stuff relies on hope if you don't start with who first. So who first, then what? Who first, then what's your passion, purpose? All those things come from who are you?
And then there's the how, and my how keeps getting in the way because how I bring things to life is through mastery. And it's
Yes.
knocking on my head going, ask Gary, for crying out loud. There's 4,000 possible question paths. And he uses a logic based programming to figure this out. Like, how the hell did you do that? I mean, I know how complicated this is.
Basically what I was doing, when Simon was trying to help me figure out my why, we basically went through every single story in my life going backwards from today to when could remember, a little kid, looking for a pattern. And so then I thought, well, why do I have to go back to when I was a little kid if it's a pattern that repeats? Why can't I go back to yesterday or an hour ago?
Right.
And you're going to tell me the same two stories. So that's what I would do. I'd say, Charlie, tell me a story about an interaction you had with somebody at work that made you feel successful. You tell me a story about how you connected somebody and helped somebody
Right.
and they had a bigger impact. And I'd say, tell me a story about an interaction outside of work that made you feel successful. You tell me about one of your kids and how you helped connect them and help
Right.
them figure out what to do so they have a bigger impact. then we would see that your why is actually to contribute to other success, to be that pebble that starts the ripple effect, right? We'd be able to see it. And so I did this over and over. And then I was at this law firm event. Funny, I just talked to them this morning. I was at this law firm event and I was doing a whole day of this. And in the middle of the day, this one gal raised her hand and said, Gary, how many whys are there? I thought, I don't
Interesting.
know. I never thought of that. And so I started keeping track of all of them. And the same 9 kept coming up over and over. So I want you to think about this, Charlie. Let's say you're a painter and you get emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually involved with your painting. You have this big canvas up on the wall and you do this incredible painting that's taken you a month to do. Once it's on the wall, there are other ways to get to that exact same painting. Paint by numbers, break it all down, take a picture of it. There's so many other ways to get to that exact painting without having to go through what you went through. So what I did is I figured out another way to get to the 9 whys where I didn't have to listen to any stories because
Interesting.
it focused on what that person would say. Somebody with the why of better way or contribute always said the
Right.
same things. So then I learned what they would say because I had so much data on them. And then I developed the whole algorithm around what people would say and how to separate them. And that's how I was able to do it.
Wow.
There was other, like I said, there's other 4,000 possible question options, but each question is based on the one you just answered. And so it double checks itself as you go. Now, I had gone out and hired a tech company to help me. And every month I'd get a $5,000, $10,000 bill from them. And it took months and months and months. It kept going on and on and on. One weekend I got so pissed off, Charlie. I said, if that frickin' idiot over there can do it, I can do it. So I learned how to program, created the algorithm and programmed it in one weekend. My next
Jeez.
book's going to be called The Power of Pissed Off, right? Because
That's funny.
think of what you can
Wow.
accomplish when you're pissed off. And so
Yeah, no,
that's exactly the
wow.
same tool that we still use. And I did it in
Wow.
one weekend. Now I have a whole tech team that does all kinds of other stuff, but I was able to take what I thought. Actually, somebody asked me this question, Charlie. A friend of mine said, "So Gary, you think you're the only one that can help someone find their why, huh?" And I was like, yeah, I'm the only one that has all this experience. I'm the only one that's done all this. That was my thinking. I'm the only one. I'm the only one that can do it. I'm special. Nobody else can do it. That's what I thought for a while. And he turns to me and he goes, well, if that's true, how many people are you going to help in your entire lifetime? I thought, huh. Well, that's kind of a smack in the face. Yeah, I'm probably not going
Yeah.
to be able to help very many people. He said, well, what if you figured out another way to do it? And I said, let me think about that. And that's what got me going on trying to turn it into a software pattern. So I had to mind map everything that was in my brain on how I would do it and then figure out how I would turn that into software. So I didn't have to listen to all the stories because the stories were subjective. And so I was able to then find another more predictable way to get to the 9 whys. I had to listen to all the stories to figure out there were 9 different whys. But once I figured out there were 9 whys, I found a different way to get to them and then turned it into
Wow.
software. Then I added the how and the what and the messaging and all that later.
You've done thousands and thousands of these. What's the most surprising pattern you've ever found?
God, the most surprising pattern. Well, the most common is the why of contribute, which is your why, but
Yeah.
it's also the one that makes people with your why, by the way, often feel like they should be in the background helping others do better. But if you put somebody with your why in a leadership role, they do extremely well because they are all about helping other people do better, uplifting other people, where somebody with my why is more about, well, let me show you a better way. It's more about me. I'm more me focused. You're more other focused.
Right.
You're more helping other people focused.
No, I was just gonna, because I'm selfish, um,
Uh-huh.
and I want to contribute to my wife Christina's life and have a better relationship. Hers is trust, simplify, contribute. And what I love about yours, when you get the readout, it tells you characteristics, challenges, what are the solutions to the challenges. And obviously, if I would have had this when I was engaged before I got married to Christina, my 20 years would have been a hell of a lot simpler because I wouldn't have to just figure it out. But what if
Yes.
you knew that about Christina? Trust, simplify, contribute. What advice would you have for me? Like, hey, this is the person that you're with, act accordingly.
Yeah. So let's for the listeners, if you have a piece of paper or maybe in your mind, I want you to think about Charlie's first. Charlie is contribute, mastery, clarify.
Yeah.
Christina is trust, simplify, contribute. So the real difference between the two is Charlie wants to, his how is mastery. He is going to dive in deep, like you've seen with the way he reads all the books, gets all the information. He wants a ton of information before he's going to move. Christina, on the other hand, her how is simplify. She doesn't want all the information.
No,
She
she
doesn't
gets so
want all the
frustrated.
detail. She doesn't care about all that. She wants bullet points. Charlie wants 3 books and 20 publications. Christina wants 3 bullet points. Can you see where that might create a little bit of a challenge? So the more he tells her, the less she cares. But the less she cares, the more he thinks she needs to understand more. She just doesn't know enough. Let me give you a little bit more. And she's like, no, I'm okay. I'm okay. No, you just must not understand this. Let me give you another perspective. Let me
Right.
tell you more about what I read. And she's like, no, that's not what I'm looking for. Well, so can you see how that, you've lived it.
And what about the trust? Her
Yeah.
being the number one, how does that show up?
Yeah. So you have clarify as your what, which means you're going to want to ask a lot of questions. And somebody with the why of trust doesn't want to be questioned a lot because they've already figured out what to do to make sure that you can trust them. If they tell you something, it's going to be the truth. They cannot lie, and they want you to know that they are trustworthy. But here comes Charlie asking 20, 30 questions about this, and she's like, what are you asking me all this for? I already know. You can't trust me? Is that what you're saying? Are you saying you don't trust me?
But also, if you violate their trust by doing
Yes.
things, it
Yeah.
could be catastrophic. And
Yeah. So somebody with the why of trust, if you can trust them and they can trust you, sky's the limit. If you
right.
break their trust, it can be really hard to get it back. And if you don't know that about her, it'd be easy for you to break her trust because you just don't know. Oh, she's so nice. She's so sweet. She'll understand.
Yeah, but if I would have known, there's like she grew up in a different culture, so it's like in her mind, an amazing husband acts this certain way, which the only truth is the stories we tell each other, and she got that story from her parents and her culture. So, had I known that trust was so important, I would ask these questions. And what about raising children? Like, what in your mind, um, what does trust mean about how you raise a child? All these things, because they're hardwired, but I never bothered asking. I figured it out the hard way by getting knocked around by life. We're in a great place today, but I had, some rough years. Now,
Yes.
you met my daughter, Amparo. Hers
Yeah.
are contribute, make sense, and mastery.
Like you, wants to have an impact, wants to be part of others' success, wants to contribute in a meaningful way. How she does that is by solving complex and challenging problems. Ultimately, what she brings is a very deep understanding, like you. So I can see how you two would hit it off pretty dang well because you both want a lot of detail and depth to it. Whereas Christina does not want that. Right? Again, it gets back to simplify versus mastery. They're almost exact opposites. One takes the complex and makes it simple. One takes the simple and makes it complex. So from Christina's perspective, it's why are you overcomplicating this? from your perspective is you just don't have all the information. How could you have all the information? You only have 3 bullet points. That's not enough information.
Yeah, no, and my wife says that my daughter's like a mini me, like she's like we're very close. And then my daughter's very close to my oldest daughter, who has trust, number one, better way, and contribute. And I, I just find it fascinating for those listening that if you have this on yourself, your spouse, your immediate family, you can have a much deeper relationship. But how? I mean, I'm driving our listeners crazy. They're like, "Okay, I want it. I want it. How the hell do I get this thing? How can I take this?" Like if a listener wants to connect with you, go to your website, how do they have the ability to do this?
Yeah, so go to whyinstitute.com. WHYinstitute.com, and you'll see it right there. Take the WHY.os discovery. It'll give you everything. And it's only $97. It's not a lot of money that we're talking about, but it's going to be invaluable for you. Have your whole family do it. We even have like a family program if you want to have me walk you and your family through it online, a virtual one. Or if you want to connect with me, just reach out, Gary at whyinstitute.com. I'm happy to connect with you if if you want to bring it to your company or do a more of a group type setting. Just, reach out. And it's just like Charlie said, the kinds of conversations you can have with the important people in your family are so different when you actually know who it is you're speaking to, speaking with. Because yeah,
Absolutely.
what we typically do, here's the typical. Let's just say I didn't know Charlie at all, and I'm looking at him
Right.
right here on Zoom. I would look at his hairstyle, look at what he's wearing, kind of try to figure out what's in the background, what's on his desk over there. And then I would create a narrative around what I think he is, who I think he is. And that would be that would be who he is to me. Whatever I come up with is who he is to me. And what if you were on here too, you'd look at him and do the same thing. Whatever you came up with would be who he is to you, and that's how you would treat him. And they're probably totally different. I would see one thing, you would see something else. So he would be treated differently by each of us. But if we know exactly who it is that we're having the conversation with, we can speak their language. We can understand the empathy you were talking about. We can have that conversation.
You were telling me that your daughters like would do it on their boyfriends or something.
They wouldn't date anybody until they knew their why, how, and what, because why go down that path if you know it's not going to be a fit? So you can understand this about somebody you're involved with. Then you can decide, is this somebody I want in my life? Is this somebody, or how do I want them in my life? Let me put it that way. Is this somebody I would consider as a spouse? If they have a why, how, and what that you're not going to get along with, that's not going to be fun for you, don't go there. It's very predictable. It's not going
Yeah.
to be a fun time for you if you're just not. Or another way to look at it is it puts it all out there in the open for you to have a conversation about it and say, look, this is the way I operate. This is my operating system. So this is what you're going to get with me. And if you are okay with that and really enjoy it and find it fun and exciting, we're going to do great. If you don't, it's not going to be that fun.
Yeah, you and I have been privileged to meet some incredible people. Earlier this week, I was with the father of biohacking, Dave Asprey. I'm going to go with like a shaman with him to the Amazons later in the year. I'm going to take my son with me on that trip. The other week, I was with Peter Diamandis. You've interviewed Tony Robbins, Peter Diamandis, Asprey, Daniel Amen, Brian Tracy, all these incredible people. And, from your point of view, who had the most surprising kind of YOS of those and why, or anybody else that, maybe you were like, huh?
You know who I had on the podcast last week was I had John Mackey,
Oh,
who
wow. I love him.
he's awesome. He's founder of Whole Foods,
Yeah.
and story is so amazing. And he's a better way guy. He's all about better way. He's always looking for better ways. We met playing pickleball, and then we just started having a lot of conversations. And then when I I had him on the podcast. I got to learn even more. And then I was at an event that he had at his house, but I was sure that his why was going to be challenge, that he, thinks different, pushes limits.
Right.
But it all had to be better. It's all about doing things in a better way. It's been interesting for me to meet people like John.
Right.
Before that, we had another gentleman who was one of, the longest employee for Nike. And I'd always ask him at the end, I said, what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given? Both of them said the same thing. They're both in their late 70s and 80s.
Right.
They both said, just do what you love. Just do what you love. The money will come, as it did for both of them. But they said, know yourself, know what you love, and do it. And there's another podcast called Founders where he interviews a lot
Oh
of
yeah.
different founders. Yeah, you're familiar with it, right?
Yeah. Right.
There's two common things that I've listened to maybe 40 episodes, and there's two things that I hear in every one of them. The first one is, how they got where they got. And the first thing was perseverance, right? Pretty obvious. Got to stick to it when everybody says you can't and shouldn't. We've both been through that. The second one was the search for self.
Yeah.
Every one of the people in there said, man, I was just trying to find myself. Who am I? Why do I do this? I didn't know. I knew what I was doing, but I didn't know why. And it's so fascinating that once they figured out who they are, some of them at 20, some of them at 30, some of them at 40, some of them 50, that's when their businesses really took off, is when they figured out who they were. And I can't remember who explained it to me this way, but it was really interesting. They said, if you don't pick something that you have passion for, you're going to get passed by somebody who does have passion for it. And that's why it's so important for you to make sure what you do, you love doing, so you have passion to do it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. You're not a grandfather yet, right?
No.
You're gonna
Can't wait.
love that role for sure. I can just tell. How old are your children?
I should be. I have one that's 31 and one that's 28. Two
Yeah,
daughters.
you're on the way. But you talk a lot about, and I love this quote of Mark Twain, who said the two most important days in your life are the day that you were born and the day you find out why. So for you, what was your second most important day?
That's a really good question. My second most important day probably would have to be the birth of our first child. Over time we do a lot of things and we win a lot of
Yeah.
stuff and we're accomplish a lot of different things, but none of that really does matter. It's when we had our first child, instantly you realize you're not, it's not all about you anymore. You could get
Yeah.
divorced and move on, but you're never moving on from your child. And there's somebody there that just needs you.
I was at this R260 conference and my wife went out to dance with one of her girlfriends. And I'm kind of hanging out. And luckily, I had, my daughter taps me on the shoulder. I was like, Dad, what are you doing here all by yourself? You should be dancing. Let's go dance. So it was nice that your kids will kind of take care of you later on, or that's what you hope. And I think at the end of the day, people are never going to remember our accomplishments. They're only going to remember how we made them feel and what impact we had in their life. And when you are not with us anymore, how do you want to be remembered?
See, that's really a tough one because right now my life is so much about finding better ways and sharing them. And I do that everywhere that I go. And when people say thank you for doing that, that not much feels better. That's a different thing though than family. That's a
But it
great
does. But
question.
look, hey, when you're achieving your full potential and what you were here, it's like,
Yeah.
I wrote this book, A Message from Garcia, because the first book I ever read, my father read to me, was A Message to Garcia. And it was written in like 1899. It still required reading in the Marine Corps. So I decided to write like kind of a play on words, a message from Garcia. And funny enough, somebody at John Wiley published it on the either birthday or anniversary of the death of Jerry Garcia. And it became an instant bestseller because someone thought that Jerry Garcia had a message from the dead. No relationship to Jerry, although I do have a guitar I'm trying to learn to play that's sitting back here. And in July, I am gonna get to that. But what I think about with what you're doing, and I wrote this book, and like some kid came to me and said, "Hey," like at a restaurant, like, "You're Charlie Garcia." And I read this book 15 years ago. I was sitting in my mother's apartment. I wasn't in a good place. And because of the lessons in there, I did this, and that took me here and here. And today I'm married, I'm successful, and all this thing. It's like, wow, like it's like throwing a pebble in a pond. The waves that you're creating, you
Yeah.
have no idea how far they're going to go. So when you think of affecting a billion people with this, like, have you figured that out yet? Like, how do you go from here to there?
The only way that that's gonna happen is with the right people coming alongside me. I can't do it. It's not gonna be me. It's gonna be connecting with people like you and the people that you know and the right, people with influence, the right kind of influence that say, "Hey, you need to know your why, and here's how you can do it," and just go there and do it. That's why we've kept the cost so low,
Yeah.
because 'cause I'm not gonna affect a billion people if I make it, $5,000. It's not gonna happen. We've kept it at a low enough amount so that anybody can afford it. When it is all said and done, I know I will have helped a lot of people, and that's enough for me. I mean, I will have shown however many I get to before when my time is up, I will have shown, including my kids, including my wife, a better way to understand themselves, and it really gives them peace of mind. So if I look at what
So
ultimately,
important. Yeah.
yeah, ultimately what it does for people is it gives them, my wife says it all the time, I just have peace about who I am. I'm okay. I'm good the way I am. I don't need to be more than that. I don't need to change. I just need to be me. A lot to be said for that.
My experience is when you become an empty nester and you've like been a very successful professional, you're like, okay, you're going to be the main breadwinner. I'm going to take care of the four kids so you can do your thing. And then the four kids are gone, and you have this feeling like, did I really achieve my full potential doing this? I could have done so much more at that like vulnerable place. If you know your why and you really understand that, you can then say, well, I have another 20, 30, 40 years left. And now I'm going to do, X, Y, and Z. So
Yeah.
I think it's a very good way. Are you working on a book? Did we talk about that?
It's sitting in my inbox right now for me to give it the final done. The book cover's done, everything's done. It's called The Way to Your Why, and it will be out soon. I'm the one holding it up. I gotta read it. I gotta sit down and do the final read through, make
Okay,
sure all the, QR codes and all that stuff working the right way, but it's done. So, it
good.
should be coming out sometime
Well,
soon.
yeah. And hopefully people that buy the book, there's a QR code and they can easily go take
Yeah.
take it. And, you should look at this Substack because you can reach people in multi-language and easily also be able to jump from Substack. And who are you publishing it with?
Bestsellerpublishing.org. I don't know if you're familiar with those guys, but
And
they,
do they have the
help.
copyright or do you keep it?
I do. I do, yeah.
All right, because then you can do more stuff because you can repurpose your content. HarperCollins has been waiting for my book and I've been delaying because I'm thinking of, Charles Dickens serialized all his novels. So I'm saying, hey, with the success on Substack, what if I put out like 3 chapters a week? I could do it in
Uh-huh.
English and Spanish. And it's a series. Book two is already 50% written. And you can get feedback too. So, you and I have to talk about,
Yeah.
how do you leverage some of these platforms to to do that. But, any way I can help, I would love to do that, how to get this into more people's hands because I really think you can make a huge impact on the world doing that.
You'll be doing people a favor. For those of you listening, if this is something that you would like to be part of, or bring to your company, just reach out to me because we're looking for the right people, who believe what we believe, who believe there's a better way for you to know yourself, and that's by knowing your why, how, and what. If you just start there, the rest becomes so much easier, as we've been talking about, on
And
the show
and
today.
I have readers in 158 countries now. Now it's English, but obviously this can be put multi-language very easily. Also, to get if it's in Spanish, that's 400 million more potential people that can do this, and it'd be very simple in this day and age to do it.
Does it automatically translate it?
No, you'll have to do that, but you could have you could have a Substack in Spanish, one in English. A lot of um, my subscribers hit the button and listen to it. So they don't read, they rather listen. They're out, jogging, driving, that kind of stuff. But I think you would do really, really well. But I like to write. I'd say 97% of people on Substack are, reading content that they like to read, and but I'm a writer at the end of the day. So, what question, Gary, have I not asked you that you wanted me to ask you that you wanted to answer?
What question have you not asked me? What's my favorite color, maybe?
Ha ha
Um,
ha. What's your now you have two daughters. You live in New
yeah,
Mexico,
yeah.
and did you get divorced and remarried, or
No,
no? You're still
I've
with.
been
How
married
long have you been married?
35 years.
Wow. That's
Yes.
amazing. Yeah, you're unusual. I meet so many people that are not there. So let me ask you a
Well,
question. I actually asked this to a lot of guests because it's such an important force multiplier being with the right person. What are you advising your daughters on how to find the right person aside from running the WHY.os? What's the secret sauce that has allowed you to be married so long?
it's back to perseverance. You're gonna. I wouldn't say every year's been happy. If my wife was sitting in here right now talking to, she wouldn't say every year's been great because it hasn't been. But you got to learn as you go, and um, we had some great years, and we've had plenty of not so great years. But we just hung in there. I mean, we've even had times where we were apart,
Mhm.
and but we ended up back together, and they get better and better and better. And there was my wife said this to me the other day. She said, "I've always loved you, but now I actually like you."
Ha,
So
interesting.
there were times when she didn't like me, and I didn't like her. Right, when you're trying to raise kids and family and businesses and all the stuff that goes into it, there are times when you just don't like that other person right now. And the
Yeah.
point through maybe the most important words in what I just said were right now, because right now doesn't mean always. Right now is just in this moment. We're thinking how many times you feel a certain way now and then you feel differently later. Well, we just kept hanging in there through the right nows until we got to the point where, hey, we actually like traveling together. We actually like doing these things together. Where there was a long time where we didn't. That's just part of the journey.
It's like a fine wine that gets better with time, and you travel, like, a lot. Like, you're
Yeah.
worse than I am, I think. How often are you on the road?
Sometimes a couple times a week. Sometimes I'm home for a week or so, but sometimes a couple times a week. And I think that's maybe another thing that's been a good thing because my wife doesn't like to travel as much. And just in our case, I get to travel more and do the things that, if she was with me, maybe I would feel more like I had to entertain her versus, let's just take an R360 event. If she was with me, I wouldn't be able to just go around and talk to everybody because I'd be worried about her being happy. So sometimes that works out really well.
Yeah. And I was worried about that for a while, but now that Christina is starting to go to our 360 events, I may not see her for like 45 minutes. She's like doing her thing. She knows I'm doing my thing. And then we kind of bump into each other again, and which is great, so
I remember what she said when we were in Florida. She's like, "Well, I didn't know that I even was going to come, and then I didn't want to come, and then I wasn't going to say anything, and then she was asking all the best questions."
I've seen our 360 members that said she'd do a better job than me. She could replace her. I'm like, see, I could be, a member and just show up and you could run the meetings. But no, it's nice. It's really nice. So look, I really appreciate you coming on, and now I will be on your podcast. I'm sure it's already scheduled, and
Yep.
I'm really excited for the members because I just want to stress one last time, finding my life purpose changed my entire life. If it doesn't fit in here, I don't want to do it. And I will say no. Like, I could have the most amazing opportunity, but if I'm not using my God-given gifts for the benefit of others in the way that works for me, I'm not going to do it. And it's really helped me. And now I'm excited about you meeting with my whole family and kind of walking through this with them because they've all done it. And I think, you know, I've met with couples when they get engaged, but they're not married yet. And I go through it with them with the behavioral analytics that I'm certified with, but having this,
Yeah.
and also when we have like young kids that are just
Oh yeah.
kind of doing what their parents want them to do or think, and then you look at their YOS, and it's a complete mismatch for what they're doing. It's like, explain to me how, and I'm sure that's something that you would probably immediately be able to see because you've done this so long
Yeah.
that whatever it is, like if you're in a role that's a total mismatch, boy, when I'm in a bureaucracy, um, based on my pattern, it doesn't work well, you know?
Yeah. And here's a question that you didn't ask me is how young can you be to take it?
Yeah, important.
Yeah, and so we've had as young as 8 years old, believe it or not. It depends on the maturity of the kid.
Right.
But 10, 12 years old, you'll get a really um it's pretty ingrained already. And if they're mature enough to answer the questions, and you'll see for those of you listening that it's written mostly in sixth grade English, so it's not like you have to have a PhD to go through and take it. And so most of the kids will be fine doing. We're bringing it to younger and younger. We're working with high schools now. We're working with colleges. We're working with universities because what we like we were talking about, the younger you are when you figure
Right.
out who you are, right, the longer the runway is you have to be who you were meant to be. And so when I was in going to college, one of my best friends didn't go to college, and he got really involved in partying, right, drugs and alcohol and all the stuff, and kind of hit rock bottom at age, let's say, 23.
Mhm.
And so at 23, then he got involved in reading all the books that we've all read, Think and Grow Rich and How to Win Friends and Influence People and Tony Robbins and all the different books.
Right.
And figured himself out, got a mentor, got into commercial real estate. And so from the age of 20, never went to college, from the age of 23 on, he's been on this kind of a trajectory.
Right.
And so now at 63, he's one of the wealthiest people in New Mexico because he's figured it out at such a young age. Where the rest of us off to college doing what we were thought our parents wanted us to do, picking a career that made sense, only to later find out it wasn't the right path for who we really are, and then having to switch. Now our runway is a lot shorter, right? From 40 on or 50 on or whatever that age is on. Those of you that are watching and listening, those people in your life, the significant people in your life, help them figure this out at the youngest possible age. So the conversations you can have, so the guidance you can give them fits them, and they'll have a longer runway to be who they were meant to be. And that's an amazing gift that you can give to people. I had one daughter go through high school and college not knowing her why because I hadn't figured it out yet, and one who did know her why. And they were totally different experiences. One lost herself, took 6 years to go through college, changed majors multiple times, just kind of barely made it to the finish line, where the other one was very clear on what she wanted, great experience through college, living her dream job right from the start. So I've saw it play out firsthand what if you're not knowing versus knowing looks like. So if you can help somebody get clear on who they are first, who first, then help them figure out what it is they want, what a gift you've given them. And you can
Yeah,
be part of that by helping them find their why, how, and what.
absolutely. Super, super well said.
Just take the WHY.os discovery. It'll give you all the stuff that we were just talking about. It's only $97, so it's not real expensive. I don't meet with anybody in person or online unless I know their WHY.os. And the reason for that, when we met, same thing, right? I mean, you had
Yeah,
discovered your WHY.os before we got on the call, because the types of conversations you can have are so different when you know who it is you're talking to. If you don't know, it's a lot harder. You kind of go around and say, "Oh, tell me about you, where are you from, what you do," all that kind of stuff. It's a lot of surface talk. So if you're in business and you want to be able to move the conversation forward faster and develop trust at a much higher rate, a much faster rate, figure out who it is you're talking to first, have them find their WHY.os, and boy, you'll be surprised at how quickly you can move conversations forward with your team and
a-
with the people in your family.
absolutely. So what I have to do, I'm going to figure out. So we do a colors assessment. It's orange, gold, blue, green. We have our own archetype assessment, and you see that I'm an Olympian seeker. So what I want to redesign is have like YOS and then have our graphic designer for me, would be contribute, mastery, clarify. If I'm having an issue, I bring an issue up, somebody can look at my thing and say, they know exactly who I am. So to operationalize this, I got to get it on the name tag. So, you were in our meetings, and imagine when you come back for 2.0 and you're walking around and you look at somebody's name and you see their stuff right there. The quality of guidance, help, counsel that you'll be able to give by just glancing down, because you get this stuff intuitively, will be much, much deeper.
Yeah, and the guard will go away. So when I know when you know that I know who you are, you don't have to try to posture and be somebody you're not. You don't have to try to impress me. You don't have to do. The guard comes down and the real conversation starts. It's like, okay, he already knows me. I already know him. Got it. I
Yeah.
see what's happening. Let's go. So it's a different type of a conversation.
I got to get everybody to get the assessment done. And then once it's in our system, it's a heck of a lot easier to, to give advice. And, if somebody doesn't have it, what often happens, like, hey, why does Gary have that on his? Why? Because you didn't take the 5-minute assessment. So, but we'll get it to you. But I'm excited about having you come to DC. You haven't talked to our DC group, but sometime later on this year, super, super great group there. You'll enjoy them.
Yeah. One other thing, now that you've asked me, and, another question you haven't asked me, and then it
Huh?
starts coming to me. But one of the really challenging things that successful people have to figure out is what's going to be your next chapter.
We spent the whole last meeting on that one issue with came in the next meeting after you was an Orthodox rabbi who was certified on Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and went through 3 of them. And it was really said, hey, now here's your WHY.os from last meeting. Now let's get a purpose statement written out. And what is the next chapter? What are you going to do in the next 20, 30 years?
And what's interesting about the group, the R360 group, is they have an unlimited menu of possibilities, right? And soon it's really not about the money. It's about what's going to really be fulfilling to me.
And
And
keep you
so,
young because we find that a
yeah.
lot of the people, they turn the brakes off and then it's not good. They got to like find an area of their life where they can put the brakes off and be challenged, not making money, but making an impact.
So if what you choose to do is in line with your why, your how, and your what, you will love what you do. So I'll say that again. If what you choose to do in your next chapter or current chapter is in line with your why, how, and what, allows you to live your why, how, and what, you will love what you do. And you will have passion for what you do. And passion is the fuel that gives you the energy to pursue your dreams. Without passion, you quit. Without passion, you give up. With passion, you persevere. So if you're ever trying to help your child find their passion, if you know their why, how, and what, if you guide them in a direction where they get to live in alignment with it, they will love the choice they make. They will have unlimited energy for it. They will stay up day after day doing it for free if they could, because they love what they do. And that's what will help them to find that success, because they'll be the one with passion working extra hard at it.
At our national conference, we had an incredible guy that also the Halftime Institute, how to have 100x impact. But part of it is understanding what is your spouse's dreams and how are you showing up to make sure that they achieve their full potential and that you're aligned and they have the space to also achieve their dreams and having that conversation. So I also think that this can be so helpful if you have a child who's going to get married or is in a serious relationship and you want that relationship to last 35, 40 years until their death do us part. You want to make sure you're with someone who's aligned, because if they're not aligned, they're losing energy in what they're doing, and they're going to bring that negative energy to the home front, and it's not going to be good for either of you, right?
Yes,
So,
for sure.
and how do you do that? Like, how do you, obviously you'd have to kind of work with you or your team and kind of understand, like, hey, this is your operating system. If this is your operating system and this is your significant other's operating system, and they're in a place that it doesn't really make sense, they're not going to be happy. And if they're not happy, it's going to cause problems.
Yes, and I've done this with some of the R360 families.
Hmm.
In fact, one of the members was on a cruise with his entire family, and they rented one of the meeting rooms inside on the cruise ship. And
Yeah.
during Christmas, we did a whole event for their family. Like, who is everybody here, and how do we all get together, and how do we have the best relationship as a family, because they work together as well. And that's the other thing. If you're a successful entrepreneur, business owner, or CEO, and you're bringing in your next generation, as you already know, Charlie,
Yeah.
with some of the R360 members, that's what we're doing, is helping them incorporate their kids into their business from the perspective of who is this that's actually coming into the business, other than they're my son or daughter,
Yeah.
right?
No, huge, huge,
How
huge.
do
And
I guide them in a way that's right for them? So one of the members has the why of right ways, a very structured process systems guide. This is how we do it. and he's built a very successful business that way. Well, he's having his son come in to join him, and his why is contribute, right? So he wants to have an impact, and he wants to make sure that what he's doing helps everybody. Well, the dad is more in alignment with, let's just not screw this up.
Right.
It's already working. Just don't screw it up. And the son is more like, but I don't want to just sit here and manage this. I want to make sure that feel like I've contributed something. So there's that conversation that just needs to be had. It's not a matter of it won't work. It's just a conversation to clarify, what does this look for you to have an impact? What does that mean? For him to not screw it up, what does that mean? But it's out in the open. So it's not this undertone of negativity.
I've seen this work very poorly where the patriarch, the father, wants to bring in the son, but wants the son to go through all 9 different job functions so that when he becomes the CEO, he's going to know, because when he started, it was just him and he had to learn all those positions. But my son's entitled, he's this, he's that, he's all these things. And I said, well, let me see what his behavioral DNA was. And he's a people person. He needs to be with people. He needs to be on a team. He needs to be contributing. And I told him, I said, hey, he has the exact behavioral personality of this guy who's friends with. And he said, you have a total mismatch for your son. Like, you have him doing these things that if it were me, I'd probably, blow my brains out. Like, he's not happy, you know, but if you put him in this type of role, he's going to excel and do very well. And you should call Gary up and ask him about like what he would do, how he would do it, and whether he would like to do what you're doing with your son. Then I had a talk with him. Oh, so my son's not an entitled da da da. And then his son is like, oh, my father isn't an SOB after all. And then, like you said, they had a conversation, and then they found what actually happened was that he ended up going to work for another firm, and the father helped him get a position in a great company doing exactly what he's good at, and said, hey, and he did that for, I think, 3 years, and then he left, and now he's working with his dad, but they figured it out because they had a conversation.
Knowing this about somebody is it gives you a language to be able to have a conversation without knowing, in this case, the WHY.os.
Yeah.
You don't have the language to talk about it. So it focuses on feelings. I feel like you're just lazy. I feel like you're this. And that's not a great way to work with somebody based on emotion. So it gives you the language to have a conversation. Hey, what does this really mean for you? And then let's figure out the right solution.
And the other thing you can do now with AI, I could load up all of this stuff in an AI agent, and it would know my entire family. It would know the significant others. And if I personally am going to have interactions, it could easily tell me, hey, Charlie, don't forget, this person is built very, very, very differently than you. And if you want to be successful, you need to frame it like this, like that, like the other. And you and I have to talk because there's a guy in Boulder that could take your entire framework in your voice, where it could be a product. It's like, I need to talk to Gary, and your voice would come up. It's like, hey, Gary, I have this thing going on with Christina, and I got into trouble because I did this or that. What do I do? And you would say, hey, Charlie, sorry to hear that, but you screwed up. Don't forget, dot, dot, dot. And you you like stepped on it. But how do you get out of it? Do this, that. So think about that. If
I,
you're interested, I'll introduce you to this guy's in Boulder.
I have that. I have a clone.
Oh, awesome.
So I have a clone where you can go and just talk to me in my voice, and you could just say, hey, My WHY.os is,
Right.
contribute, mastery, clarify. What does that mean? And I'll just break it all down for you.
I like to play around with it. Let me know how I
Yeah.
can
Yep.
use it, and I will. That's pretty cool.
Yep. So there's over actually 5 million pieces of data that I put into it to
Yeah.
knows everything about every podcast I've been on, all the stuff it has in there, continually updates every week. And it gives you, up to date conversation with me. So you could even say, hey, my WHY.os is this, my significant others is this. What are some things we should be aware of? Where are we going to get along well? Where are we going to maybe have some challenges? All those kinds of things. You can do it with your team.
Uh, I would love to see how it works, test it out. Just no rush, but I would love to take it to the next level because I think other members would appreciate it also.
It's called Delphi. It's a tool called Delphi, and it allows you to create your own clone. And there's a lot of companies out there probably now that have that ability. It was one of the first ones.
I'd love to see it. The hard thing is, it's inexpensive if you're just typing back and forth. But when you get into voice and you're doing everything by voice, it takes up more tokens and it's more expensive. So love to see how it works.
I think I'm grandfathered into the unlimited voice even, but I don't know.
That'd be good. Well,
they change it all the time, but
yeah. Well, thank you for coming on the podcast. This is awesome. I learned a ton, and I know that all my subscribers and listeners learned a ton, and I look forward to our 2.0 and then our 1.0 with the group in Washington, D.C. later on this year.
I love it. Thank you, Charlie. Thanks for having me on. Thanks for being a great friend and supporter. I really appreciate it.